all about being able to apply the techniques in different situations. And like as a business analyst, like I think by doing any sort of course, you're not going to know how to apply the techniques to every single situation that you would come across as a BA. But with the ACBA, it does give you the core techniques and practices that you can use to then figure out how you can apply it to different situations as you work as a BA.
Well, hello and welcome to the fabulous James Dean. Glad to have you here with us. James is one of our newest ACBA participants. Welcome to the club of the ACBA Certified Business Analysts.
Thank you, Andrea. It's so good to be here. Thanks for inviting me along.
Awesome sauce. So tell me, James, where you're from, what you do, and what industry you're in.
Yeah, so I'm based in Ireland, in Dublin. I'm currently a business analyst with an actual title of business analyst. I know a lot of business analysts that you kind of talk to, they mightn't have that official title. And within the business analysis domain, it doesn't depend on your title. It depends on kind of what you're doing and the skills and the techniques you're using. But I do have a business analyst title. I'm currently working in the energy domain for a company called Grid Beyond. So they help different kind of large corporations reduce their energy costs, but also increase their revenue. So there's a bit of kind of there's a technical aspect to that as well, which was quite new to me. As a business analyst, I've been constantly on a journey learning different things, different domains, different terminology. And one of the kind of the key points from this course or key takeaways has been being able to use that terminology or being able to use it in a certain way to help other stakeholders understand what energy is, how it can be used in different projects, how we can break it down, and different things like that. So probably cut there because I can't really remember what the rest of that question was.
No, that's okay. You hit location. I really want to hear about your title and your industry. I mean, it's exciting with energy, right? Because there's so many minor nuances, but you've worked as business analyst across different domains. So what is that like? I mean, this is very involved and there's some very technical things. And you mentioned that you had not done energy before. So has it been totally different from you moving from domain to domain?
Oh, 100%. Like even before I went into my first kind of professional job as a business analyst, I graduated with a Bachelor of Science honors degree in IT management. I actually wanted to be a dancer before I went to do anything with like IT or anything computer or software related. It was actually my mom who was like, "Oh, you like computers. Why don't you just do the computer course?" And I'm kind of like, oh, "Okay." Well, I didn't have like I wasn't like anything kind of I didn't really know software development. I didn't know anything to do with IT. I knew the kind of the basics of a computer, but like a lot of people that I talked to, if you're like can get a YouTube video on, or if you can access your emails, or if you can do something that they could never do, they're like, "Oh my God, like you're so good at computers." So that's the kind of the route I started to go down. So I actually went into computing first. And within your first year, because it's a 4-year degree, in your first year, you choose which one you want to do, whether it's like software development or whether it's going to be like IT management. So software development just didn't really click with me. It was a lot of technical aspects, and I can kind of understand the terminology. I can read codes and I can understand like what the issue is, but then to write code to fix the problem, that's where I was like, no, it's not for me. So I went down the other route of IT management, which was more kind of database IT management. You had like ITIL in there. You had a different kind of business management, all these different modules. And it was only until I started in my first company, which was ERS, Enterprise Registry Solutions, which was in the corporate and business registry domain, completely different to what I'm doing now. I only found out that I actually was doing some sort of business analysis within college. I just didn't realize. So we were doing like, say, object-oriented analysis and design, where we're using kind of state flow diagrams or sequence flow diagrams. And at the time, I had no idea. I didn't even know what business analyst was. So I didn't know what it entailed. I didn't kind of know much about the role. And that's when I started to kind of like, I got an interest in it. And I was like, I really like working with people, talking to people, communicating, helping them solve problems. And that's what I was like, I really want to do. So I kind of had a focus on that. So I started to look into more. I found out about the IIBA, so the International Institute of Business Analysis, and I got my entry level certificate to business analysis. And then from there, it was more like the recognition when people seen like the kind of what I was doing within my work. They were like, oh, this guy can actually do the job, you know? So kind of more work came along. And I started to go into kind of a bit of product ownership then, whereas doing a bit of business analysis and product ownership. Still, my main focus was to kind of leverage the skills that I had kind of used. I never had really kind of any formal training up until then. The only kind of guidance that I had was senior BAs that I had worked with in the company, but it was to a certain extent because they were also being kind of pulled left, right, and center for different projects. So it was a lot of kind of learning on the job, which was good because I was kind of thrown deep in to the deep end, and it was kind of like you sink or swim. So it turned out well because in my first company, after a year, I became the lead business analyst on my team, and I was actually then leading the team of different BAs, and I was actually kind of delegating tasks and doing different things than I was. So I was constantly learning, and then I got to a stage where I wanted something new. So I went to a different industry. That was the life sciences industry. That was with Eurofins. And from there, completely different, completely different to corporate business registries. But what value I had was I took the experience from ERS and I was applying like my communication skills, my different techniques that I was using, which wasn't really a lot. Like I kind of was using kind of functional specifications. I was using more kind of like just talking to people to kind of get to the root cause of a problem, but no kind of like really official techniques until I came across this course. And so at the back of my mind, while this was all going on, I've always come across Bridging the Gap, and I've always seen Laura post on LinkedIn, and I've always been really interested with her posts and articles, and even the book, her first book, or I think it was one of her first books. I think it's called How to Be a BA or How to Be a Business Analyst. Sorry if I got that wrong. But that was a real kind of opening for me where it was like, hey, there is actually other people that are actually doing this job. I actually thought it was just a one title business analyst and everyone is a business analyst. But the more that I got into my career and the more kind of I got down my journey, I learned that people in, say, product manager roles are actually doing business analysis, or in like project management, or they could be a product owner. Like there's so many different titles, and I think that's the beauty that I found from overall in the working with business analysts, that it's not just you're limited to one role and doing one thing. It opens you up to so many different avenues, which then led me on to joining the energy domain. So that was a challenge for me because they wanted someone to come in who will be their first business analyst, like official business analyst, and to kind of like they wanted clearer requirements. That was the main kind of ask. And I was like, okay, well, I always want more. I always want to push more, and I want to see like how does their team work, how does their different processes work, like how does the systems work. We're always like, as a BA, I think you have to be curious. So you have to be curious of how different systems, processes, how even people work within the company. What are the different departments? Who do I need to talk to when I go onto different projects? And it's just been a roller coaster of a journey, but a constant learning curve and discovery of different how you can apply different techniques, especially from this course. Now that I have like a tool set of techniques that I can go in, and I know that I'm confident I'm using them even to train other employees like with best practices, and say, okay, when we're like creating a process flow diagram, we don't want to just say, oh, we create a process flow diagram. We want to understand why we're creating it, and then what do we do with it? Like we're using it to analyze a business process. So like, what does that actually involve? It's not just, oh, we just map out all the steps and yeah, that's it, away we go. So it's been really useful for me because it's enabled me to show not how long like business analysis takes, but to the value that it can bring if you do kind of break it down into smaller chunks, and then you kind of like look at it like iteratively.
Sweet. Oh gosh, there's so much to unpack there because you said so many amazing things that I think are the experience of business analysts everywhere. You started out with, okay, I started in IT and I just didn't take to software development. That just
Yeah.
seems too hard. And now look at you where you are, because a part of what you're doing as a BA is assisting with that building software, right? So it's not that you are writing the code, but you have the ability to do what you said, which is communicate, right? You have these soft skills, and communication was one of them, and curiosity. And that's really kind of where BA starts, right?
Yeah.
You start to be curious and you start to ask questions and you dig and you dig. So exciting there. You mentioned a lot of things too. So you were lucky enough to have the title of business analyst, and you've done it for a very long time. And that was some time before you came to us, or even before you got to how to be successful as a business analyst with Laura, right? Yeah. You came across some of her material. You were connected on LinkedIn and kind of following. So take me from there to what motivated you to seek your ACBA.
So it was more, it was a cost related challenge for me, because at the time, when I was in my first company, I did want to do that course, or I did want to even, I don't think it was called, or it had a title of ACBA at the time. I think it was just the Business Analyst Blueprint program.
Right.
And I did want to kind of look into that, but unfortunately, because my company were funding my training for the ECBA, the certificate for IIBA, the whole process there, and there just wasn't enough funding. So I kind of like, I always had it in the back of my mind, and I was like, I really want to do that one day. I just don't know when. So when it came to my kind of defining my professional goals within my new company, for the year, I just had kind of like said, oh, hey, I'm interested in this course, and it can allow me to kind of train employees with business analysis, because they didn't want to hire another business analyst. They just didn't have the budget, unfortunately. I think that is the case with some companies. And I was like, okay, but if I could like learn the best practices of these key modules, then we can like work out a kind of a system where I can train different employees to kind of help them do business analysis, and that might then bring some value. So I had to, it kind of just was like mentioned, and then my manager was like, oh, okay. So then it kind of came up again, and then I had to submit, it was kind of like a proposal, where it was like, right, you had to say, okay, what value would be to the company? How is it going to benefit the company? How's it going to benefit you? And one of the benefits was, I have like this 5-year goal to become certified business analyst professional. So that's it's a stepping stone to help me with that. Not only because it gives me some sort of professional development credits, but also it will help me just validate that, hey, yeah, I am actually using these techniques, and I am actually doing a good job as a business analyst, because a lot of the time we have like imposter syndrome, and you think you're doing a good job and people say, oh yeah, you're doing great. Well, you mightn't feel like you're doing great yourself. So it's kind of giving you that like extra confidence to then go on and say, okay, yeah, I am actually using these practices or these techniques in the best way possible. And I have got validation from instructors within the course. So it was really just because I had it down as a goal, it was just a matter of getting it kind of confirmed that HR or the company was actually happy to proceed with funding of the payment of the course. So it was a bit of back and forth, and then it was literally just like a call with the HR manager, and she said, yeah, that's fine. So we're happy to go. And I was like, deadly. And I had to give a justification just to say kind of it wasn't going to impact work, like my work schedule. And I said like, I'll do it in the evening and also on my weekends. So like it's kind of like I'm taking it outside of work, even though it is going to be used within work, like a real kind of work project. So that's kind of how it came all about.
Awesome. Okay. So you were able to submit justification to your company so that they would fund this for you. And then you also agreed, hey, this is not going to impact my work. I can do this outside of my regular work schedule. So you did a fantastic job and you achieved your ACBA. Do you think it was incredibly difficult to do it outside of work, or was it structured in such a way that you were able to accomplish it and still maintain everything you needed to maintain?
I think at the start I thought I could only commit, or I would only have to commit so many hours. But then when going through each of the exercises within the workbook, it kind of was like, oh, actually, I need to commit more time to this. And I think I was taking it from like, this is a project. So although I'm doing like a project in work, I'm looking at it as, okay, it's going to be iterative. It's not just going to be like a one and done. So, oh, I'm going to fill out this section here and that's it. Close the workbook, James, and go away. It's going to be like, okay, I'm going to fill out here. And when I get to like, say, section 3 or 4, I might have to go back and like reword that or make sure I'm using the correct terminology and make sure that there's like consistency there. So I was thinking it like everything I was writing within each of the sections within the workbook is like a requirement. So making sure that it made sense, making sure that it was complete, concise, and that it could be like measured and things like that. So just kind of, I think just because of my business analyst mindset, that's the way I was kind of approaching it. So at the start, I was able to give a lot more time, but then as even before I finished the whole entire course and I achieved my ACBA, different stakeholders within the company were already seeing the value that was being benefited. So I was already being given more projects or assigned to new projects or being asked to kind of look into this. And that kind of took up a lot more of my time, which I think it was when I got to module 3, which was the data modeling. That was a little bit challenging for me because I had to juggle more time with allowing more time to commit to the actual workbook, as well as not having an impact on my work schedule. But overall, I did have like some sort of high level plan that I mapped out, and I was like, I'm not going to watch Netflix. I'm not going to like watch TikTok or anything like that because one video turns into 20. And I because I just had such a motivation from even reading the schedule and what was involved. I just had such a curiosity of how it was going to work and what I just kept saying to myself, okay, I'm not just doing it because my company is paying for it. I'm also doing it to benefit me, to make me feel more confident as a business analyst, to make me more to bring more value or to bring more value to my company so that it can benefit them, so that they can then benefit other employees, so that I can train other employees. All of these different things kind of came out of my mind, and I just kept going reiterating that in my mind just to say not to give up, basically, because like you can, for anyone that's doing the ACBA course, you can get to a stage where you might hit like a roadblock or you might come across a certain module that you're like, oh my God, this is just, I'm not getting it. And that can happen. And that's okay. But we have amazing instructors like Andrea, and that's there to support and guide, and you're going to get through. So I would say like, it's a matter of just commitment. Just when you commit to something, make sure you commit to it. And if you come across a roadblock or a problem or a challenge, reach out for support. Yeah.
Good deal. So you said something exciting there. You hit that challenge of, wait a minute, I thought I was going to need to put in this amount of time. I needed to put in that amount of time, but you started out with a plan, right? You said, I'm going to treat this as a project. So I work projects at work, or I have a commitment here. And so you followed that, maybe a little less Netflix and a little less TikTok, because you're right, it'll get you down a rabbit hole, right? But you wanted to finish it in spite of challenges that arose with maybe a little bit of difficulties. You reached out to the instructor team and you got what you needed, it looks like. But not only did you finish, you said you started to show value early on at work and they started to see it. Take me there. Tell me what occurred there.
So I was using kind of one main project throughout the course, but what you guys don't know, on the side, I was also applying the different practices or techniques within a module to different projects that I was on, because I wasn't just assigned to one project. I was on like 4. So there was one project in particular where we were trying to optimize and trading for different customer batteries within the company. So basically to make the company more money, but also make the customers more money as well. So we had this whole kind of trade application or products that we wanted to build. And this project, before I was assigned, had started like a year prior. So it was even before I joined the company. And when they wanted me on the project just to kind of, again, get clear requirements. And that can be quite ambiguous. I mean, clear requirements, what does that mean? Do you mean like planning? Do you mean like actually scoping it out? Do you mean like managing the requirement? Like so many questions. So when I was assigned, that's the first thing I was kind of like, okay, what's the scope? You know, what's in scope? What's out scope? What are we trying to achieve? What are the goals? What are the objectives? Who are my stakeholders? All of these different kind of questions came up, but mainly at the time I was doing the business process analysis module, which was fantastic because I had always used business processes, some sort of process flow diagram, but not to an extent of delivering value, I suppose, like getting into the ins and outs, like the inputs, the outputs, what's involved, the steps. I was mainly kind of focusing from, okay, what do they actually do? Just to understand the process, but I didn't take it a step further to actually analyze. So I don't think I understood that at the time. So I've been using that like in my first company, but more to kind of say, okay, yeah, this is what they do. This is what we need to do now in the system. But that was to the extent. It wasn't really kind of the ins and outs. So with this particular project, I remember we were on so many calls and so many different stakeholders we were going around in circles. We couldn't like understand, or I couldn't understand what the end goal of that particular project was. So what I decided to do was just map out a process flow diagram and literally put in all of the high level steps that are involved with this one process. And I use it as, okay, what are we trying to achieve for this particular project? So it wasn't really a business process, but it was more like, okay, what are all the different things that we need to do in order to achieve the goal of this project? And what we found by doing that, or what I found, when I actually modeled it to the different stakeholders, we found a gap. Straight away, we found a gap where we didn't have a solution for one step within that actual process. So then that involved taking it away. We had to actually do some identification of solution options to then evaluate which one would be the most cost effective. The bad part was that it had a knock-on effect with the timeline and the delivery date that was kind of set, which was kind of strange because I'm not sure how anyone didn't come across this. But people did thank me for kind of like pointing out that, oh, we did find this gap, but it just had a knock-on effect and with everything. So it kind of pushed out deadlines. It then increased our scope, and then it involved a lot more discussions. But if we didn't find that gap and we tried to go live, we would have been in a worse position. So that was one kind of example where not the project that I was using throughout the course, but the techniques and the way that the technique was taught for business process analysis. I was able to use that on a different project to then identify the gaps that we might have missed if we didn't actually model that whole flow and actually do some analysis.
Wow. So you said a lot there with your BA work as business process. Oftentimes we find that, okay, just tell me the process and you document the process, right? You got your flow chart and you know what the process is, but you took this a bit deeper now with the skills that you grabbed through the business process analysis module. And that's looking at the entire thing end to end, right? Not just the process, but what's going in, what's coming out, and more importantly, what is the goal we're trying to achieve?
Yeah.
And you had this huge win, right? You found this gap, and finding that gap allowed you to identify a timeline too. So we've got to step back and look at this for real. And while it might not have been what your stakeholders wanted to hear at the time, it ended up being just what they needed to hear. So kudos on that early on. I love that we talked about this because now I have this awesome question for you. And that's, you came into this ACBA program already having served as president in an IIBA chapter, and you had already done kind of an exam for your ACBA?
Yeah.
So tell me what's different between the two. And the burning question I think folks might ask is, if you were already certified there, why do this? And I think it's important for people to understand not just the difference, but why this growth needed to occur.
Yeah, 100%. And it was one thing that I was thinking of before I started the ACBA. That I was like, oh, I actually kind of have this business analyst experience. So what benefit is the ACBA going to be over like ECBA or CCBA or other certification programs that are out there? I think it's a great question, and it's a valuable question. It's a valid question to ask. I think with ECBA, that's that's the structure of the Babok guides. So it's the business analyst body of knowledge. It's so I do get a few messages about this of different connections on LinkedIn. And the way that I explain it is that the ECBA kind of sets you up to understand the different terminology and definitions within the Babok guides. So it's the Babok guide is just a guide to how to do business analysis. It's not a step to how to do business analyst. It's a guide of what you should be doing or what you should be considering. But the difference with the ECBA and the ACBA, not to get them confused, is the ACBA, I feel, is so much more valuable because you can apply real world experiences using these different techniques and tools that are taught throughout the course. So if I was just doing, say, a LinkedIn course where it's kind of like you're clicking through different videos and you're like, yeah, complete. Yeah. It's just giving you like a broad understanding of, okay, yeah, this is what business process analysis is. But by doing the ACBA, you can actually take away what's being instructed by the instructors and then apply it to different situations. So even if you're not working as a business analyst or you're not working in like a IT section, you can use it within any kind of job that you're doing or even volunteer work. Like if I wasn't a business analyst, I could apply, I can see so many ways that I can now bring these techniques to the IIBA Ireland chapter and to structure more, to plan out, like if we're doing a particular professional development initiative, we can scope it out a bit better. We need to identify our stakeholders. We need to understand what are our goals, what are our objectives, how do we measure those? So by using the different techniques within the ACBA, it's a lot more valuable because you're getting that verification that you're using them the correct way. You're getting different feedback from different instructors, and you know that you're on the right track. Where if you're doing the ECBA, it's just an exam. So it's just kind of validating that you know the different terms, the difference between the terms and the definitions within the Babok, and like the different types of stakeholders, like what is a project manager, what is a business analyst, things like that. What are the key knowledge areas? So I'd say that would be the main difference.
Sweet. Very good explanation. And we hear this a lot. Okay, if I've done this, then why do I need this? Or help me choose between the two. And it's not that one is any better than the other. There's value in them and there's value in them together, right? So you can validate that you have this knowledge of these terms and the entire Babok, right? And you can say that, okay, I've got this, I passed this exam, but you can also say over here with the ACBA that you have this other knowledge. This knowledge here is also important. There's value here in applying the knowledge you have over here, and you get that opportunity to practice it with your ACBA.
Exactly. So, yeah, it's all about being able to apply the techniques in different situations. And like as a business analyst, like I think by doing any sort of course, you're not going to know how to apply the techniques to every single situation that you would come across as a BA. But with the ACBA, it does give you the core techniques and practices that you can use to then figure out how you can apply it to different situations as you work as a BA.
Cool. Is there anything you would like to say to anyone who might be considering doing their ACBA?
I'd say go for it. Don't hold back. Like it may seem challenging at the start, especially if there's a lot of different modules or terminology that you're not familiar with. I would say for me, like data modeling, for example, the third module in the course, that was completely new to me. I did work with some kind of system analysts or solution architects in the past, but very briefly at looking at like entity relationship diagrams. But I never knew myself how to go about creating it, how the kind of the requirements that would be fed in from a stakeholder, or when you're eliciting from a stakeholder, how you would actually elicit them to then feed it into an ERD, and then how it maps to the different techniques like the data dictionary, and how that then applies to if you're using like a UI software elements, how the data dictionary will dictate the data fields and the data validation and the rules and like the min and the max and all those kind of things that need to be considered for data requirements. So it was a whole eye opener for me, but absolutely brilliant experience, because I never thought that that part would be valuable as a business analyst. I always thought that that would be more kind of technical or with the development team, like database related. But I can see so much value of how the way it's taught in the ACBA course, how it can actually be, how we can use it as business analysts within any project that we're doing that involves like data requirements or data mapping or data integration or things like that. So it was really, I would say, if you're thinking of any particular module that you're like, oh, I don't know about that, I would say give it a go, because it is, for me, this course has been one of the best experiences, because it's given me the confidence to now go forward and use these techniques. Although I might have been using some of them before, but it's given me the confidence that, hey, I actually know exactly how to use them. And I've gotten that kind of confirmation from my instructors. I've gotten the feedback, I've applied the feedback, and I've used it on a project that I've been working with. So it's been a value to me to see how it's being worked, but also within my company, because they're like, oh, okay, we can see how now these techniques, like for example, my project manager, she was like, oh, I think I need to do like more kind of business process analysis, or when I'm scoping out a project and you're not involved, I can do some like use cases. So it's enabled different people within the company to kind of not, like, I think a lot of time people think it's a business analyst and they just do all the requirements. And it's just, we just write all the requirements, hand it out to the development team, and then that's it. We go away, we go to the next project, but it's so much more. So by doing this course, like even the last module, it gives you the best practices and the 8 steps that you can apply to any project, which has been so beneficial for me because I'm able to now go to senior stakeholders and say, hey, not that we need to use all of these 8 steps when we're doing all of these projects, but this is what we should consider. You know, we need to consider what part we're at. And I'll give you an example. There last week, I was assigned to a new project where we're building a new product for something. And the first thing I asked, I was like, okay, but what are we building it for? Like, what's the problem we're trying to solve? What's the opportunity we're trying to address? And I still haven't got that clear answer. So that's an ongoing discussion. But I'm like, before the expectation from the person who's going to assign me to that project is just to start development straight away. But I'm like, but hold on, we need to take a step back. We need to, I'm thinking of the 8 steps. So I'm like, we need to actually identify who our stakeholders are, identify our business objectives, like determine our scope. We need to come up with a solution approach. Like all of this, if it's already been kind of considered, then I need to review that documentation. I need to do some document analysis, or I need to use different techniques to actually analyze the solution approach so that we can ensure that, okay, this is the right way forward. But until I know like all of these answers to the questions that I have, we can't just jump straight into development. And I was like, it's not the best way to do it as well, because I, as a business analyst, because we work with the development team, we need to understand what we're trying to achieve so that we can actually help the development team understand the value that they're going to deliver by building X feature or capability. And if we don't understand that, and we don't understand why we're doing something, then it's of no value to us. It's of no value to the team. We could have ended up building something or developing something that won't be used by the user or won't be used by the customer. And we don't want to be in that situation. So although it might seem, if you're using these techniques with your senior stakeholders or seeing different stakeholders within different projects, there might be a bit of pushback. But if you explain the value by doing not like entirely upfront analysis, but the key analysis, I would say, at the start of a project, then it enables you to bring value in the whole project, because you're not going to miss kind of anything, or you'll be less likely to miss something as you go through the projects.
Well, let me just applaud you here, because what I hear you say is this non-software developer person who just felt like this was not their area has now gone through this program and learned to communicate better, and the value of communicating with developers, and even learning a little bit about data modeling without having to do any coding, right?
Yeah.
You are now able to talk to your project manager and your development team and explain them why we don't need to go forward yet until some key information is identified to save us from ourselves, right? We can build something, and that's awesome. It sounds like we have an idea of what we want to build, but we need to step back. Why are we building it? Yeah. So this framework you're mentioning, I think it's important to mention here that 8-step framework is a part of the final module of the Business Analyst Blueprint. And that kind of brings it together and makes you ask these very important questions before you even get started. Why are we here? What are we trying to achieve? Who are the people that need to be involved? And where is it we're trying to go? Great. And you felt the confidence then to say, hey, we're not going anywhere yet.
Yeah.
Let's get these answers.
Because previously I would kind of just like shut up and get on with it. But then, like, as you get through the project, like I've been on a project before, and if I had asked the question at the start, we mightn't have been in the situation where we are like now, or where we were before thinking. But now, because I know that that we can, as business analysts, kind of question, not to be difficult, but to ensure that we're like solving the right problem, that we're identifying if we're going to be building this solution, how we're going to measure it, who do I need to talk to actually elicit the requirements. And I think that's really important, like the key things that are important, because a lot of people, especially in some companies that I've worked with, they don't see the value of identifying stakeholders. But if you don't identify stakeholders, you could have a misrequirement, and you could have a critical misrequirement or a process that needs to be included within the solution. Like, I'll give you another example where I was using the use cases and wireframes module, and using the different techniques there within another project that I was working on. And we had just created like a use case diagram with the different use cases. And then the plan was to iteratively take each of those use cases and use the use case documents within the course to go through each of the flow. And what we found, by even mapping out the use cases, the assumption was made that there was only one stakeholder group involved. And when anyone says it's just one, I'm like, I think it's from my experience that there's never just one. It's always like at least two. So I kind of was like, I need to kind of verify that. So I don't like assumptions. I always validate assumptions, because at least we know, okay, if we validate something, at least we've got our answer. So we've done a bit of analysis just by looking at the different use cases and kind of how each use case flow together, like within the whole journey of the solution. And straight away, we found there's a gap. So there was a key stakeholder that was missing, it was the frequency template project, where this particular stakeholder, once the frequency templates were created, they needed to use them in a different area of the system. So because we were changing this whole solution of how it worked, and it had an impact on this particular business process that was missed for this stakeholder group, we were able to use the use case analysis and the wireframes part of that course to actually say, oh, okay, we actually need to talk to them too, to understand what do they need to do and how does this impact them. So by using the mixture of the use case of module 2 and the last module, by identifying stakeholders, it actually then not increased the scope, but it identified a missed requirement, and that could have led to rework if we had got further into the solution and the development parts. So I think that was really valuable to, even by using that technique, that we were able to literally see, okay, yeah, this stakeholder is missing from the solution. And how did we know that? Well, because when I was using, I can't remember exactly what step, when you're trying to determine the scope and you're identifying like your primary stakeholders and you're understanding the existing systems and processes by looking at a particular process and how that fed in with the solution that we were proposing, it enabled me to then say, oh, this stakeholder, what about him? Like he needs to be considered. So that was one part that was really valuable.
Nice. I think we touched on every module of the course. That's awesome. It sounds like you had some major impact here from every module, and that has allowed you to make some very big wins with your current employer. And I am looking forward to hearing more about those new wins that will come along. So I will congratulate you again on earning your ACBA.
Thank you.
My hat's off to you. Kudos for doing that and adding to your list of achievements. So thank you again, James, for visiting with us and sharing all of this information. I enjoyed you as my own participant, as a part of the program, and I've been watching things that you're doing, and I just can't wait to see what happens next.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thanks so much for all of your support and guidance throughout the course. I couldn't have done it without you. So thanks so much.
Awesome. I'm glad to see everything you've achieved, James. Thank you again for our meeting with us today.